everyone, and welcome to episode 524 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we got the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard, probably better known as Black Tuna, apparently, according to Google. How you doing? How you doing this morning, Black Tuna?
Why are you Googling me, Seth? I think we use Black Tuna like once in a podcast, and then the Google AI has decided that's my name. Yeah, what's up? Lots of spoilers.
Yeah.
Aetherdrift, what? I'm already like 2 sets into the future. Watsy pacing.
We are. Oh, yeah. Pro Tour Aetherdrift going on, but we're talking Final Fantasy. We're talking a return to Tarkir and Tarkir Dragonstorm, and also the Pro Tour, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We got another ghost in Grim. Back from MagicCon Chicago. How was it, Grim? Did you have a good trip?
I did. I had such a good trip that I blew my voice out. But it was really nice talking to everybody that kind of just watches the content and really just shows a lot of love coming in and saying hi to y'all. And then also got to play a lot of bracket games, as many as I could.
Ooh, nice. I mean, brackets aren't a big topic today, but I'm curious, how did you like the bracket games? How did the system work for you in practice?
I personally enjoyed them. There's obviously some things that need to be fixed, but I think that also they need to put out a new infographic.
Were people
I'm not
confused?
sure that some people know what a bracket like X is, right? Like bracket 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's like, oh, it's a power level. No, it's not a power level thing. So I think they need a less confusing infographic.
Did they not put like a giant banner like across the command zone or something, like explaining what brackets were? Did they do anything like bracket related there specifically, or did they like section the play areas by brackets, or was it just like the normal command zone and then you just did your thing?
It was a normal command zone, and then I just was like, hey, I have these bracket decks, right? And then so I just mostly went into the field and pretty much trying to be getting all the research data I could personally. It's like seeing what people think a certain bracket is, and that was very interesting.
Could you get a sense of how many people were actually using the bracket system versus how many were just playing whatever, like playing old school style? Like, were a lot of people like talking about brackets and using brackets?
I think maybe because I initiated the conversation, a lot of people were talking about brackets, but it feels like a lot of people were just like, half the people brought bracketed things. The other half were like, I don't know. I didn't really have the time to check the brackets, so I'm just gonna play
7.
this. And I think I'm a 4. So
I thought everyone would be bracketed out, because if you go to MagicCon, you're like probably super enfranchised, right? Like you're super into the Magic scene. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, so today's topic, actually we got 3 big ones. So we're going to start with Pro Tour Aetherdrift. We had a big Pro Tour this weekend. It was interesting. There were some funny moments. So we got some information about Standard from that. And then we got spoilers for days. We got more Final Fantasy spoilers. We had some of those Commander cards last week's podcast, but they actually spoiled some main set stuff. And then from MagicCon Chicago, we got to look at Tarkir Dragonstorm, which looks super amazing. So Pro Tour spoilers, hopefully a fish mail or 2. That's the plan for today. Before we get into it, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit, it's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a little bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, it's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and let's start with Pro Tour Aetherdrift. So Pro Tour Aetherdrift was this weekend at MagicCon Chicago, actually. It featured the Standard format, and I spent a lot of my weekend watching this tournament while I was doing other things for some of it. It was pretty interesting. Before we jump into it, Richard, why don't you give us a quick overview of what the top 8 ended up looking like at the end of the day?
All right. Well, going into the weekend, or not going into the weekend, but like starting off with the initial deck list, it looked like your typical metagame, right? So what you expected. So bounce, domain, and then Gruul. So that was the field. However, as the weekend progressed and we settled into the top 8, it actually was just Domain Fest. We had 3 domain decks, I guess. 2 Gruul decks, a mono red, and then a Jeskai Oculus. And the finals was a ever so exciting domain mirror that ended in spectacular fashion. I heard. Seth can elaborate on that. And because it was a mirror, obviously Domain won, and Up the Beanstalk won. And if you go back many podcasts when we're like, how do you beat bounce? The answer is beans. It's always beans.
Yeah.
You bounce my thing, I'm gonna get value on ETB and draw a card. So beans. But what happened at the last finals match, Seth? How did the Pro Tour come to an end?
It was one of my favorite endings to a Pro Tour. So it's this Domain Overlord mirror. Matt Nass was playing James Dimitrov, I believe, or Dimitrov. But Matt Nass versus James. So they have this mirror going on. And one of the things that happens in this mirror is both players have Zur, and they have these big overlords that are enchantment creatures. So they end up playing their Zurs and turning their enchantments into creatures and just gaining like huge chunks of life. So the way the match played out would be like, well, I Zur, animate my overlord, swing at you, gain back 20, and then you swing at them and they chump with their tokens from the white overlord and they gain back 20. But anyway, like this match goes on for like 2 hours. They're finally in game 5. Matt Nass has a huge board of like all these leyline bindings, all these overlords. He's got the Zur, but his opponent is at like 52 life, I believe it was. And so they pass the turn back to Matt, and the opponent's like, am I dead this turn? And Matt like counts up and ends up with like 46 damage. And it's like, no, I don't think you're dead. But then he was like, oh wait, I have this Up the Beanstalk. I can turn that into a creature with Zur too. So he proceeds to count again. He ends up at like 48 damage. And he's like, wait, but I think I might have missed this Overlord. And by this point, Matt just lost all confidence in his ability to count to 52. And he proceeded to count like 4 more times. And he has like 25 permanents on the battlefield. So he's counting and he gets up to like 56 and then eventually to 60. And he's like, wait, maybe I actually do have lethal. And this process takes like 6 minutes or 8 minutes. It's just like so many minutes of Matt Nass trying to count to see if he has lethal. And finally his opponent is just done and just sticks out his hand while like mid counting and just shakes his hand. He's like, dude, you just got it. So the attack never even actually happened, but it just goes to show like how ridiculous some of these board states can actually be. Even for like Matt Nass is one of the best combo players in existence. Like when I think of Matt Nass, I think of like KCI loops and these super convoluted combo decks. So Matt Nass is a really good player, and even for him, like trying to figure out this board state and if he had enough damage was actually a really big challenge.
That's because he's a combo player. He doesn't know what combat math is.
I was yelling math is for blockers at my computer screen, but he wasn't listening. Just math is for blockers, swing, hope for the best. But apparently that doesn't work in the Pro Tour finals like it does on the arena ladder.
Remember when it was like
Tron,
Selesnya Manifest or whatever? Where it's just like the game goes forever. Everyone has like 50 permanents. And then you're like, I don't know what's going on. Oh, these mid-range mirrors in Standard are like out of control.
The other funny part of it was, even though it was like a 2-hour super back and forth match, every game winner was the person on the play, like through all the domain mirrors. So in the end, it was like whoever got to go first ended up winning, even though sometimes it took like an hour to actually get there. What do you think of this meta then? If you really want to break it down, it's the 3 big decks like Richard said. The top 8 was essentially 3 domain, 3 red aggro decks of some variety. There's like a Leyline, a Mice, just a mono red, and then Golgari Graveyard and Oculus were the 2 oddballs. What do you think of this meta, Krim? Like, what does this say about Standard moving forward for the next few months until we get to Tarkir?
I think that what this is going to say is that the meta is now going to adapt to a full Overlord's takeover, right? The Pro Tour is never actually like it's good for that meta and that meta alone, and then afterwards everybody shifts and prepares for like the Overlords. So I'm curious to see what happens if Overlords just stays dominant despite everyone preparing for it. I guess it's, Spell Pierce doesn't matter when all your Overlords can't be Spell Pierced, right? So
or you just make so much mana you can pay eventually. That deck, like, it gets out of hand.
You could just pay for the cards, right? Which is nuts. But, I mean, right now, people got what they wanted, right? Right now, I'm excited to see that the meta was able to adapt. They were tired of the Esper Blink or the Pixie Blink decks and like the Dimir ones, so they wanted to see what would stomp it out, and it looks like we found what did, and it would be Overlords. Lots of people in this meta playing random things that I did not expect to even break it into the Pro Tour. Like we're talking about the top 8, but we haven't mentioned yet what was outside of the top 8. And I think some of those that were hilarious, that Azorius Control was cooking. I love Control, but I hit a point where I just ran my head into a wall so many times I had to put the deck down, right? But it seems the pros figured it out naturally. Or what about Golgari Obliterator? So I think this meta has a lot to offer. And as long as we're willing to dig deep and actually jam the games and playtest for it. So I am excited to see where it goes from here. Right now, this looks like a really good meta. I don't know. Is a mid-range meta bad? Like, if the best deck in a meta is a mid-range deck, I feel like that's got to be decent.
It's pretty diverse. So, like, the most represented deck in the meta was Bounce at like 16%. The other category was at like 25%, and you can pretty much play anything. Although I don't know what it means when the top 8 congregates back to Overlords. Like, everyone was cooking, but they cooked too hard and sucked at their draft games. Like, I don't know, right? Or like, at the end of the day, the top 8 looked like your normal meta, right? But it was like down, like it's not like so heavily lopsided, right? Like, I don't think anyone would be calling for bans or power adjustments based on metagame share, right? Possibly based on gameplay patterns, right? Like, do you want to see beans for the rest of standard? I don't know, but it's pretty diverse. The one big asterisk is Aetherdrift was basically non-existent. No new archetypes. The best card in the format apparently is Ride Down, which is a 5-mana instant speed removal spell, but it gets a discount of 3 when you target a tapped creature, which conveniently triggers your Beanstalk. So the Overlord decks were playing that. But, there's no max speed. There's no vehicles. There's no... What's the other mechanic? I don't even remember what the other mechanic is.
Exhaust. It was so good.
Exhaust. Oh, yeah. No loot. No loot combos.
No loot.
Like, nothing, right? Like, nothing Aetherdrifty about this Pro Tour.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. They were doing like the top 10 Aetherdrift cards on coverage. And they're like, number 10, Afterburner Expert. And I was like, well, no one actually really plays this card, but it seems like it could really be good eventually. It's like, that is not a good sign for your Pro Tour coverage when you got to start off with that asterisk. Yeah, I actually mathed it out. I was curious which sets were most represented. And this was just in the top 8 because it would be too much work to do the rest of it. But in the top 8, looking at non-land cards, Bloomburrow Duskmourn are the two biggest sets with it's 19 and 16% of the cards, non-land cards in the top 8. At the very bottom, it's actually Phyrexia March of the Machines Foundations and Murders of Karlov Manor. And then Aetherdrift is right after them with 15 cards. So definitely kind of disappointing not to see more of an impact. And I'd like to be like, oh, I think it'll come eventually, but the world moves so fast. I feel like by the time Aetherdrift could find its legs, we're going to be on to Tarkir, we're going to be on to Final Fantasy or one of these other sets. So I don't know, what do you think, Krim? Is Aetherdrift just going to be like a Murders at Karlov Manor, where it's a set that doesn't end up having a huge impact and is kind of like a fringe role player? Or do you think there's still some like sneaky potential that something from Aetherdrift could break out in coming weeks?
I mean, I think the Gearhulks are just good enough to where they would eventually become like, a very playable card. Right now, just like Murders, I guess if your perception on Murders that it's like a unplayable set, I think then this will be viewed as an unplayable set. I was not expecting there to be a whole new archetype or anything like that, but I was excited to see that there were cards from Aetherdrift to get played. And most importantly, the one that I cared about, you did the numbers on the top 8, but not what was outside of the top 8, and just barely outside of the top 8. there were lots of decks that were used, like, Dimir decks and whatnot, that were using my baby boy Oil Deep Gear Hulk. So I'm just happy to know that I'm at least not high on my own supply, and that I know that there are others that see the value of Oil Deep. So right now, I mean, yeah, maybe Aetherdrift isn't going to spawn a new archetype, but it's a solid role player, just like Murs at Karlov. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the flavor of Karlov Manor is great, but I do think that there were playable cards, and it was a solid role player. So I don't know. We'll see as the future continues to roll in, and I don't know, more cards come out. Maybe something pops up, but right now it's looking like a solid role player, and that's about it.
So we're going to talk about spoilers in a minute, but I got to ask you about this one specific card choice, because the thing that stood out most to me, and I think the biggest difference between what the pros were doing and what I see on the arena ladder on Magic Online, actually involved the sweepers that were played really across archetypes. What I see on Arena and on Moto is people play Sunfall for days. That is like the sweeper in Standard, right?
Yeah.
If you look at these Pro Tour deck lists, Domain, the control decks, really across the board, the pros all decided that Sunfall actually is worse than Day of Judgment. And if you look at those deck lists, most of them have like a single Sunfall in 2 or 3 or 4 Day of Judgments. Have we been doing it wrong? Have we been overrating Sunfall, or Standard players overrating Sunfall? Is it just like being a mana cheaper is enough to make Day of Judgment the better option for control decks and domain decks and so forth? What do you think of the Wrath selection?
I actually can see why, like, Day of Judgment is just a mana cheaper, and that is relevant, right? When you have Mice as one of the top decks, you may not see turn 5, or by the time you sweep on turn 5, you're dead anyways, right? So I think, with how much, like, Rides End and cards like that have come in, like, and Get Lost, and you have enough now spot removal to where I think you're just hoping that you can just live long enough to Day of Judgment, because that's kind of where we're at right now. Maybe Sunfall's a bit slow, and we'll see the meta probably follow suit here. But yeah, I can understand why Sunfall isn't like a 4 of.
I mean, no one's outvaluing you as an Overlord deck in the late game, right? You have the card draw and you have the life gain to stabilize, so you just need to make sure you don't fall over dead. So the 1 extra mana is extremely relevant. So it makes sense, like, in hindsight, right? So I don't know, beans, just beans. You just need to make it so you can beans people, right? And then you're good. So
Pretty much.
anything you need to do to get there, and then you're good. The fact that the deck has life gain is what makes the difference, right? Like, if you just had a value deck, if you're at like 3 life or something, you could have like 8 cards in hand and just fall over to like a lightning strike, right? But the fact that you can Zur and like bring yourself back up, now it's like an impossible task to kill you, right? It's when like the control decks have a life linking finisher, it's like really over, right? Like, they put it down, they hit you, now they're at a nice life total with like 50 cards in hand. You cannot win anymore. So you just got to get to that state, and Day of Judgment, I guess, helps you more than the value you get from Sunfall.
Yeah, and go ahead, Grim.
Well, yeah. Like, the value you get from Sunfall is like now is again marginal, right? It's like not worth it. Not when it's like you're a turn later.
Even though it does trigger the beans, like it is a Wrath that triggers your beanstalk, but even that's not enough to make it worth it, even in that deck. But I think
you have
all
no
that to
shortage
say,
of ways to trigger beans. You'll be fine.
That's true. If anything, there were some games where the concern was like, oh, if they kill this temporary lockdown and get back there up the beanstalks, they might just mill themselves out. Like, players were intentionally like worrying that they were accidentally going to draw their entire deck and lose the mirror match because of it. But all this to say, if you're playing on Arena, I mean, consider Day of Judgment. It seems like, based on what the pros are saying, if you got to choose a Wrath, not that you should completely eliminate your Sunfalls, but if you got to make the choice, it seems like Day of Judgment might be the way to go right now in Standard.
I mean, yeah, like the deck also has 3 temporary lockdowns and then 3 Day of Judgment. So, like, really, at some point, you have too many Wraths. You have nothing else to do, right? So there is such a thing as too many Wraths. But you mentioned this real quick, and I got to ask you about it, because you just said that there are points in the matchup where beans kind of led to them almost milling out. Is this where the return? Because I was jamming blue-white control when Domain was popping off because Jace the Perfected Mind. There were games where I didn't do anything, but I just played Jace. I -5, and then I played another Jace, I -5, and they lost.
That's why I don't find it surprising that Blue-White actually did really well. There were only like 5 people on Blue-White or something, but they posted a 70% win rate. And if you look at their deck list, they're playing 4 Jaces in the main deck. So with so many people playing the Domain deck, that's kind of like a buy, right? If you're playing 4 Jaces, it is hard to actually lose to Domain with a control deck because eventually you're just going to mill out of the game. So as long as you can make sure you survive against Gruul and against the aggro, maybe Blue-White's actually really well positioned right now. But yeah, I think Jace in a Domain Overlords meta is going to go way up in value. One other thing I forgot to shout out, just because it was a super cool story, the Golgari Graveyard deck that made the top 8, Kevin Faust. So this deck, it's actually kind of like a budget Magic deck we played a while ago, where it's up the beanstalk in all these like Huskburster Swarms, Hollow Marauder, these like 7 mana, 8 mana creatures to get a discount based on how many creatures there are in the graveyard. And you just try to play up the beanstalk and then chain together a bunch of these like to draw a bunch of cards. But the deck's really neat. It's pretty easy to put together, like almost budget friendly on Arena. So it's a cool option. It's really fun. But the coolest part of the story was Zevin Faust, who made the top 8 with the deck, they did an interview with him. First Pro Tour. So he was so excited and just like shocked that he was doing so well at his first Pro Tour. And he told the story he qualified playing his first ever RC. So he went from not having really played competitive Magic at all to just high rolling RC, qualify for the Pro Tour, into top 8 of the Pro Tour to qualify for a bunch of upcoming stuff. So shout out to Zevin on a really cool performance. It's always cool to see someone like brand new make it to the top 8 in a tournament.
They also jammed a lot of those like Huskburster Swarms because Aetherdrift brought in the new bug one, the 5/4 bug. So now you have
the Chitin Gravestalker, yeah. So you get even
I
more
believe
of that.
you, and that's what it's called. So I will not debate the name because I don't remember it. But there's another piece that is a part of the Blue-White puzzle that I think I forgot to mention that might have actually pushed the deck over. It's not just Jace.
Are you going to say stock up?
Dig through time in Standard? Is this real? Like, is this card real? I overlooked this card. I did not expect this card to now be like $10 a playset. That means this is $2.50 per. 2 in a blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put 2 of those cards in your hand. Rest on the bottom in any order. Is this card the truth?
Definitely the best divination we've ever seen. I've actually seen people talking about it being good in Vintage. Like, apparently this card has been way better than anyone expected. But yeah, I think I think it's the best like card draw effect for a control deck in Standard now. Like, seeing 5 cards is huge. So I think we all kind of missed that one. But yeah, I think that's part of the reason the control decks were looking good.
Well, I'll be making a video on this deck. If you're telling me that Blue-White's back, I love it. I love everything.
I'm ruining Standard Magic.
I
just want to eat a sandwich between my rounds. Like, you're gonna make me go to time every round. We're gonna have to like sweat it out. Make sure we're not slow playing so we can actually finish the game.
All right, let's move on from Pro Tour, unless y'all have any final thoughts, and talk about some spoilers, because we have not one but 2 sets of spoilers to talk about. And let's start with a kind of a continuation of our Final Fantasy discussion from last week. So last week during the podcast, we had a few of the Commander face cards, and I know, Richard, one of the things you were saying, and we'll talk about some individual cards in a minute, but one of the things you were saying is you really wanted to see the showcase style, because the normal style, whatever, it's fine, but the showcase gonna make or break it. Now we've seen a few of the showcase cards. What do you think, Richard? Where are we at with the hype level for Final Fantasy?
Oh, I've been on a roller coaster ride this whole week, Seth. I was like so hype, so sad, so hype, so sad. Here's my conclusion, guys. Here's my conclusion. So the showcase arts look amazing. Okay, the main art set, like, it's okay, right? But the showcase, they definitely held back and put everything into the showcase. And then they revealed a bunch more cards, which we're about to talk about. But the overarching story is that they went up for pre-sale, so we got to see the prices on Amazon.
Yeah.
And a play booster box, so just a normal, like the cheapest booster you could possibly get, is $210 for a standard set, which is outrageous, right? You're really thinking like 120. If you're like a boomer and remember the good old days of like $80 standard boosters,
$90
right? Where
boxes.
you're like, it's ridiculous, right? And you're like, oh, okay, how about we get a precon? A precon is $75, right? A 4-pack of the collector edition precons is $600, right? So after I looked at the prices, I'm like, this product is not for me, right? Like I came to the conclusion I'd rather crack 2 boxes of One Piece than a single box of Final Fantasy Draft, where I'm not going to want anything in the play boosters because it's going to be the boring base arts that are like meh. And then the kicker is, so there's a Yuriko art, which is Yuffie, right? It's like the original concept art or original like game art. And it's gonna be like $1 million, right? Because it's a special treatment. It's like the bonus sheet. It's called Final Fantasy Through the Ages, so it'd be like the big score type printing. So it's Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, shifted as Yuffie, and it's gonna be a lot of money. There's a Final Fantasy TCG with the exact same art, this exact same Yuffie art. The card is like bulk, right? It's like 5 cents,
proxy.
right? So people are just gonna take it and be like, "This is Yuriko, and you're not stopping me," right? And the actual Yuriko is gonna be like $100, $50 or whatever, ridiculous. So I'm kind of off the Final Fantasy hype train. I'm like, it's gonna be on Arena. I guess I could just draft and free to play it and buy the singles I want because I can't drop like 6 collector boosters or whatever, right? Like 600 a piece or whatever, like $3,000 on like some random cardboard when it's just not worth it, right? Like just buy a PS5 and get every Final Fantasy game and get like, thousands of hours of entertainment. You know what? A Final Fantasy 14 subscription is how much? $15? You can waste your entire life playing that, right? So the price is out of control. And the problem is if you don't like Final Fantasy, right? And you just want to opt out, don't matter, right? Standard legal booster packs are inflated now. You're paying masters prices. You're going to pay $200+ for a booster box of play boosters, and you can't do anything about it, right? That's a standard legal set, and you can't just be like, I don't like the IP. I'm like, oh, better hope, random Final Fantasy deck is not meta, right? Like, imagine if Overlords was Final Fantasy, right? Like,
Yeah, that's the part that concerns me. Like, the fact that it's standard legal makes it feel a lot different, because I think that standard's supposed to be the accessible format, right? That's supposed to be, out of all the Magic 60 card formats, the one that you can realistically, as a new player, like, get into and not get totally wrecked financially. So I do have a concern seeing standard box prices going up so high. I will say, I'm still not convinced these prices are actually what the prices will be 4 months from now when the set releases. Like, I still think this. I've tried to do some digging on it.
MSRP. So it has to tank so bad that people are liquidating their product, right? Like they're selling it for below what they purchased it for, but there's confirmation that this is MSRP, right? We know this is MSRP from what the stores are telling us. So this is the price, unless it flops so hard that they're liquidating it.
So Wizards never actually publish MSRP for boxes. They publish it for the packs. And we know that $210 for a box of 30 packs is like paying like a straight up MSRP for 30 packs all the way up to 30 packs. Normally when you get a box, you get a discount, right? Because you're buying in bulk. That's what's kind of missing from this equation. So I think normally like the LGSs get a discount buying boxes compared to buying packs. And then we get a discount buying boxes compared to buying packs. So I'm hoping that it's going to drop to some extent because of that. If we really are in a world of $210 play boosters and $500 collector boosters, and that's the norm for Universes Beyond in Standard, that has me a little scared. Like, I don't know. What do you think of all this, Grim? What do you think of the prices? Are they going to come down, or is this high price point actually legit?
I hope they come down. I sure as hell hope they do, because the only concern I have about this is, as Richard had mentioned, it's like if I want to play Standard, I am going to have to pay a lot of money to get these cards because they are mandated, like they are legal, right? So I hope they come down, though, because right now there's a lot of hype. I think buying in early is always the wrong move, no matter what set it is. On top of that, I'm going to be very honest here and say that buy singles. Singles guarantees what I need, right? If the set is just absurdly high, then sure. Just get the singles. And for the people that love Final Fantasy, like I have so many friends that have already pre-ordered that they never gave a crap about Magic. And then all of a sudden they're texting me and messaging me like, bro, I'm locked in. And they send me a picture of their screenshot of their receipt. I'm like, why did you pre-order right now? Right now is the worst time to do it. And I'm just like, dude, it's like comically irresponsible to pre-order right now.
So asterisk, if you pre-order on Amazon, like from Amazon itself, if the price goes, so you can cancel anytime you want before release. So it's not like a hard commitment. And then if the price goes down, they will refund you the difference. If the price goes up, you get your cheap price. So the correct play is to actually pre-order from Amazon. Now, if you want to support your LGS and pre-order from your LGS, then you got to check like what their policies are about, price changes. But Amazon is super nice about that. Disclaimer, I pre-ordered my crap, but I'm like very like cancel button, right? Like the cancel button is there anytime. And then I had to check. I was just like, how do I get into Final Fantasy pre-release? Like I haven't attended a pre-release in like 8,000 years.
You're gonna
I don't know what my
for.
DCI number is. I'm like, where is it? What is going on? Like I need to get all my
DCI numbers anymore.
Yeah, we don't have DCI.
I don't think we even have DCI's numbers anymore.
No,
yeah, that's gone.
I was gonna show up with my little slip. No, I still have my card. Where's my card, guys? I need my DCI number. See, I gotta learn how like organized play works. Like this is ridiculous. The prices are killing me. Like commander decks are not gonna get discounted, right?
No.
Like that's the MSRP.
No. I mean, actually, what's the Warhammer decks at, right? Because like the Warhammer decks, are they like cheaper now, or are they? I don't know.
I'd have to look them up. I haven't checked them recently.
As of right now, from what I just see, just from typing in Warhammer MTG, all the decks are like $138, like 130-ish, except for the Necron, which
so
is
they've increased in price.
Oh yeah, so they've even pricier. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that's the one that you want to pre-order, right? Like that is if you want to pre-order anything, it's got to be the commander decks because that makes sense.
So I would just give one word of warning. Fallout, though, seems to be about normally priced. I just like randomly Fallout popped up. You can buy all 4 Fallout decks for 172, so it's like $45 a piece, basically. And those we know are the most popular of all time, right? According to Wizards, like Fallout's the best-selling commander decks they've ever made. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's true, but like that's because it's Fallout, yada yada yada, and. But I think one thing we're not taking into account here is this is Final Fantasy. This is not Fallout. I look.
Yeah.
Like, hey, some of y'all are going to love Fallout. That's great. Fallout's dope. But, like, it's Final Fantasy we're talking about here. This is, this is S tier.
I think better or worse than Fallout. Like, I keep hearing all these things. Like, people compare Final Fantasy to Marvel, to Lord of the Rings. And I don't know what they're even trying to say, whether it's better or worse. Because to me, you can make so many arguments. Like, oh, Marvel has greater, like broad appeal, but Final Fantasy are, waifu hunters that will pay like $8,000 for their cards, or the intersection of Final Fantasy and Magic is much stronger than Marvel. And so there's all these weird arguments you can construct, and it can go either way. So you think for sure Final Fantasy is more popular with Magic players than Fallout, right? Is that what you're saying?
I think Final Fantasy is going to be the best selling Magic set.
So, better than Lord of the Rings. Better than Lord of the Rings.
I think it's going to sell better than Lord of the Rings. And which is funny is because I thought Final Fantasy wouldn't even be as anywhere near Lord of the Rings, but seeing how big it is right here and like right now, and the hype was never this big when it came to Lord of the Rings. This set is going to blow everyone away when it comes to sales, and that is concerning.
A lot of people grew up playing Final Fantasy. I think there's a like pretty strong correlation between Magic players and Final Fantasy players. Like I think if you like one, there's a decent chance you like the other. So I think it's going to be big. The only thing I would say price wise, Wizards might print more of them because remember this is like a premier standard set. I feel like the Warhammer decks were maybe a little bit like not super heavily printed compared to like what a standard set would be. So that would be the only other thing I would say is that like if they just print a ton of the commander precons, that would help keep the prices from going up. Like I don't think they're going to go below 70, but it would maybe keep them from spiking to 150 or something.
Costco,
you also have to remember, Richard, you are a one-piecer. and you know the communities in One Piece, you know the communities in like other anime card games. I have never seen those accounts post Magic. Like, there's lots of social media accounts that are like, oh, One Piece gamer. I love every, anime card game that comes out. They never talk about Magic. This is the first time my feed has like the top One Piece like posters talking about Magic. And so like the weebs move fast. I think we figure that, right? Like I say that, it's not a joke, it's not metaphorical. Weebs move fast. And I think this is gonna be the first time the weebs are gonna also be here and also playing Magic and whatnot. So I don't know. This is a little scary when it comes to like if I want to buy stuff myself, but singles. I'm just gonna stay away from this. The only thing I want to pre-order is the commander decks and singles.
Look, if One Piece and Weeb has taught me anything, is all we can afford are base rarity cards, right? Like, if you want, like, the chase card, people are willing to shell out big bucks, okay? Like, $500, like, no problem. So the competition is fierce. So the base art is what you really need to evaluate if you're a normie and, like, you want the card. Yeah, so that's what you need to look at, right? Because you're going to see lots and lots of shiny cardboard, and probably most of it will be out of reach. Like, think of like the Japanese fracture foils, the anime arts or whatever of the old sets. Like, they're ridiculously expensive, right? So you can imagine the Chase Final Fantasy cards are going to follow the same suit. So yeah, so base art for us.
This is this is right before Marvel and Avatar, after being revealed at Chicago, and Edge of Eternities, right? That's it looks amazing. With how much product is coming out this year, I think I gotta settle for the base set. I think I gotta settle for base set. I don't know, maybe pick up a Raid Shadow Legends sponsor. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, no, we gotta get Raid Shadow Legends.
What VPN would you recommend? Would you recommend to me, Krim? I've been looking for a VPN. Any suggestions? All right, let's
go cards.
Let's talk about some spoilers before we run out of podcast time. Richard, why don't you show us some a few Final Fantasy spoilers?
All right, I'm gonna read them from the borderless alternate versions, because those are the good versions, okay? Cecil, Dark Knight. Okay, a single black, legendary creature, human knight. 2/3 death touch. Darkness. When Cecil deals damage, you lose that much life. Then if your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, untap Cecil and transform it. The backside is Cecil redeems Paladin. 4/4 lifelinker. When Cecil attacks, other attacking creatures gain indestructible until end of turn.
Is this card not insane?
Like, what? This is a standard legal card.
It's a 1-mana 2/3. That's like that's
death touch.
Insanely
death
powerful.
Touch, by
and
the way.
It's death touch. People play 1-mana 1/1 death touchers. Literal 1-mana 1/1 like 1-mana 1/1 death touching rats and stuff. This card's so good. And remember, this isn't like a jackal pup. It's not how much damage it takes you have to take. It's just how much damage it deals. So worst case, you're only taking 2 a turn if you're hitting with this. It trades up in combat because of death touch. And then it flips into a 4/4 lifelinker. Like, to me, this is like one of the things I wonder about this set is how many cards from the early days of design are still in the set? Because they mentioned starting working on this set in 2021. We're in 2025 now. That was back when Universes Beyond was modern only. I wonder if we're going to see some like cards that were kind of pushed for modern kind of sneak into the set thanks to its shift to standard. But Cecil seems like a busted card. What do you think about this, Krim?
Is it Death Shadow playable?
Except for the part where it flips into a lifelinker.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so you actively hate the backside? Okay.
Although it crews the last ride if you want to try to shoehorn that into your Death Shadow deck.
Was it Cecil piloting the dark last ride? I think this card's solid. I think it's very solid. I do worry though, okay, just hear me out, because yes, if the backside's gonna flip you're gonna get there real quick. Mostly because I think Mono Red's going to kick your teeth in so fast that I worry about this card, right? Like, imagine, you can block him, death touch him, do whatever you got to do, right? Like, yeah, cool. But they will still just overrun you into the ground, right?
Yeah, although I actually kind of like it against Mono Red, because one of the problems I run into with Mono Red is they just use their pump spells and trample over your blockers, right? Like, this is
Right,
one
right.
mana, always trade with your Heartfire hero, always trade with your Emberheart Challenger, even after you throw a bunch of Monstrous Rages at it or whatever. So, yeah, you're going to take a bunch of damage, but I do like that it's always going to be able to take down one of those creatures in combat.
I mean, yeah, I guess you don't have to attack, right? It's like Liliana's hidden mode. You don't have to activate her.
Like, play it and don't take up Liliana.
Crim. As a Final Fantasy 14 connoisseur, I would assume you know how Dark Knight works. What is Dark Knight in Final Fantasy 14? It's a tank.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
unkillable. How do they
yes.
tank? They lower their life total, look super sketchy, and then they
Yes.
sustain it back up. So Cecil, I think, will not die to aggro. I think in true Dark Knight fashion, you just lower yourself down, or you play defense, and then you transform, and you tank, and they keep hitting you, and you don't die. It's so versatile, I think it goes anywhere. Control, tempo, aggro, mid-range, right? Because, like, in a control deck, it's a 1-mana 2/3 death touch. It trades with anything. It's basically, what's our Doomblade in Standard that takes 2 life?
Infernal Grasp.
Infernal Grasp. It's Infernal Grasp, right? It's a 2/3 death touch for some reason. And then it can randomly flip in the late game and, sustain yourself. The biggest knock of this card is that it's legendary, right? Like, if you draw multiples, it sucks, right? So that's the biggest problem with this card. But otherwise, you either, like, go to town, lower your opponents. You have this, like, unmovable blocker that, unlike a rat, doesn't, like, fall over to a bear. Like, it can kill the bear and then, keep doing it. So Cecil, I think, is crazy. And 4/4 lifelinker is nothing to sneeze at, right? Like, the flip
that's a
side
real
is
card.
insane, right?
Card seems
So
solid.
I think this will be everywhere.
I
Flavor's on point.
I don't know about control, but I'd play it in any aggro deck. I feel like it's a great aggro card at a minimum.
Seems
All
good.
right. Okay, that's just a lowly Dark Knight. How about the card that's taken social media by storm? Jumbo
Tonberry.
Cactar.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, sure.
5
I guess.
green, 7 mana value. It's a plant. It's a 1/7. 10,000 needles. When this creature attacks, it gets plus 9999 plus 0 until end of turn.
I think everyone that's a commander player and whatnot is gonna freak out about it. And of course, we're hitting anime numbers now because we've never had 1,000 of anything, right, on a card. But in standard, this is just gonna get bodied, right? You paid 7 mana.
Oh,
Dude.
it's so.
Will it?
So
Will it
bad.
get bodied? What if you
What are you
attack
gonna
with
do?
it, though?
What are
I
you
mean,
gonna
okay.
do? Delny in this is gonna be wild, I guess. But
Yes, this
Well,
is
we
a
have-
terrible card. It
Yeah,
dies to Doomblade, right? For 7 mana, it dies to Doomblade.
yeah,
But the possibilities are endless in Commander, right? You
yeah,
untap
for
with it.
sure.
You Rogue's Passage, that's 10,000 damage. You deck yourself
haste
out
it.
with green card draw. You Swords it, and you basically have infinite life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of funny things you can do with this card, but it's a 7 mana do nothing, right? So it's pretty sus. But I'm sure you can farm some wins with it in standard. Just play against the deck
this
with
is
no
against
removal.
the odds,
It'll be
right?
it'll be a good
yeah,
against
this
odds
is
card, that's for
against
sure.
the
I mean,
odds.
really, what do you need to do it? You need to, like, give it haste and trample, pretty much. If you can haste and trample this, it becomes very, very frightening. That's not going to be a competitive strategy because I think there's a lot of
You just gotta
pieces to
give it
actually make that
haste and
happen.
trample.
Yeah, just gotta give it no problem.
Easy.
And then maybe, like, unblockable a little bit and, counter spell in hand, and then you're in business. You got a stew cooking.
There's got to be some way to reanimate this, which would actually kind of be competitive, or like get its ability from the graveyard. No.
Wait, why would I reanimate this? Let me ask you this right now. Why would I want to reanimate
Because
this
you would one
card?
shot, like, it has to be a reanimate with haste, right? Like, if you reanimate with haste and one shot
But
someone.
what if they have a blocker?
That's okay.
Then your plans are foiled, yeah.
Then they got you. You move on to the next.
Is this legit?
They got
Is this
you, son. They have a blocker.
Is this a legit commander card? Like, this is actually kind of scary at the table, right? Like, you have to feel like if it comes down, I don't think it's busted, but you got to have the fear that it might come for you and you might just die the next turn. Like, 10,000 power is a lot. Like, that's a lot of damage.
There's infinite ways to win the game if you untap with this, right? Like, you can Chandra's Ignition, like, you can fling it, like a lot of bad things can happen when this, when you untap with this, so you kind of have to kill it. It's just, like, slow and telegraphed, which is why it's bad, but you know, if it gets there and it lands on the battlefield, you have no interaction. You're quivering. You're like, no, not the 10,000 needles, right? You're running.
It's once it gets to do the 10,000 needles, because technically, if it just sits there, it's a 1/7, right? So they have to attack before they do the Miku's Spark. I don't know Ashandra's Ignition, and so I mean, this is a cute card. It's cute. It's fun. It's the embodiment of Commander.
All right, let's talk about a new mechanic.
Wait, Richard.
Yes.
If you're going to talk about Standard, how come you're not going to mention everyone's favorite Moogle, Stiltskin?
You want
Moogle
Moogle?
merchant.
We got a Moogle? We got to talk about Tarkir, too. Okay, let's...
Yeah, we got Tarkir spoilers.
But you...
Stiltskin Moogle Merchant. It's a 1-drop. It's a 1/2. It's a Moogle. Lifelink. 2 and tap. Target opponent gains control of another target permanent you control. If they do, you draw a card. What is the standard application for this, Grim?
I know I just made fun of you for trying to be like, oh, I'm going to reanimate the Jumbo Cactuar. But let me tell you something. Demonic Pact is back, baby.
Wait, Demonic Pact is in Standard right now?
Yeah, you can just gift them
forever with foundations.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You can still give it.
I mean, even that, you still got to get it unsummoning sick. It's like, so we have Bizarre Trader, right, from World Wake that is a red 2-drop that can tap to give your opponent something you control. Normally, they don't see play because you'd rather have a donate or a harmless offering so you don't have to play this little creature and have it not die. But it still seems like another fun against the odds stack, right? Like,
most likely.
It's going to be cool, though, to Moogle away a demonic pack on someone. I don't even know what a Moogle is. Is that what?
It's an adorable little male creature, and that jam and have jazz sessions, and they're super cool. And they say Kupo. That's all you need to know.
They say Kupo.
That's the Kupo. It's adorable. But another thing is, lastly, design-wise, I think the summons are brilliant. I think we now have saga creatures. Yeah. I think that's really cool.
We got it. That's the mechanic they revealed to us. So Shiva, summon Shiva is the name. 3 blue, so 5 mana. It's an enchantment creature, saga elemental. So it's a saga creature. It's a 4/5. Chapters 1 and 2, Heavenly Strike. Tap target creature and opponent controls. Put a stun counter on it. And then chapter 3, Diamond Dust. Draw a card for each tapped creature your opponents control. So it comes down, it's a creature, it does the Heavenly Strike, it It Diamond Dusts and goes away. Just like the video game. So a new take on banishing. It exactly captures what a summon is in Magic the Gathering. I'm like, whoever did this is like a genius. It's a new take on banishing. And also how they previewed it. This is an uncommon. This is the first summon they gave us. Do you know what one of the first summons you get in every Final Fantasy game is? It's Shiva, right? So, this is it's so good. They know what they're doing. Card is
flavor win.
Okay, I don't know. This card's okay, right?
Sure. The card
it's not terribly broken. Maybe it sucks. 5 mana, 4/5, attack twice. You attack once or twice. You attack once.
One attack, yeah.
And then you Diamond Dust.
I mean, you gotta remember this is a random uncommon. I feel like this is a really cool mechanic and probably a pretty powerful. I feel like because it sticks around for such a short amount of time, you can probably kind of push these cards a little bit. At least the creature is part of them because you only get one attack. You play it and play defense for a turn. You can attack the next turn, then it sacks before you get to combat the next turn. So I really like the idea of it, but I don't think Shiva itself. If people are playing that in Standard, I would be very surprised. But probably good limited, top end limited card.
Just such a cool design, more than the card itself.
So cool.
I really love this one. They nailed this out of the park.
Oh, we can't wait for the mythic ones like Bahamut, Alexander, some of the top end summons in the game. Are we getting Knights of the Round? Are they coming here? So
I gotta say, I don't even care about Final Fantasy, and this set looks so sweet. Just seeing the cards has me really hyped for this set, and I'm not really a Final Fantasy player, so hype level increasing. But we got to talk about a little bit of Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers, because that was the other big news of the weekend. Before we get to Final Fantasy, that's not until June. We're going back to Tarkir, and Wizard gave us a first look at the set. That is actually the next set we get. Comes out April 11th. Spoilers start the middle of next month, so we're 3 weeks away, I think, from spoiler season actually starting. Richard, why don't you talk us through a handful of these sweet new Tarkir cards?
All right, Tarkir Dragon. You love Wizards facing. Here's all Final Fantasy stuff, but don't worry. Tarkir Dragonstorm is coming next. Here's some cards. So return to Tarkir, and what better way to sell cards than to make another Mox? Mox Jasper, 0 mana, legendary artifact. Tap. Add 1 mana of any color. Activate only if you control a dragon.
I want to say this card sucks, but I remember saying Mox Amber sucked, and then Mox Amber is currently breaking Modern and Grinding Station combo. It turns out that if you're a Mox, you're probably going to be broken somehow, no matter how much of a restriction that Wizards puts on it. So I feel like this is a pretty safe Mox. Dragas are pretty expensive, right? It's not going to be easy to make mana with this early, but I don't know, maybe there's some like Changeling deck. Yeah, maybe Changeling.
Tomer is like salivating over this card.
My question is, let's say you're playing Standard, or I guess apply this to Commander as well. Let's say you're playing a Dragon deck. You know you're going to be able to turn this on, but you're not going to turn it on until turn 3 or turn 4 consistently. Is it worth? Like, is an extra mana of any color on turn 3 or turn 4 good enough for this card to see play? Like, do you play this in a Dragon Commander deck? Do you play in a Dragon Standard deck, even knowing you're not going to have like a 1-drop Dragon most likely to turn it on quickly?
I don't think this is going to go in a Dragon deck. Like, I
think it's just purely a Changeling
CDH?
Yeah.
You think it's Changeling?
Yeah, I think it's like a Changeling deck or something. I don't know. Like, it's not in a traditional Dragon deck, right? Not to my knowledge, unless they've... What's the cheapest dragon we have? Like Rook Egg or not Rook Egg?
There's
that thing rotated
in Standard
out.
right now. There's
Changeling Outcast.
You can Shivan whatever, the Expel one for 2 mana, and then there's some 3 mana ones. So it's as good as it gets in Standard currently.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, no. That's
not enough.
Okay.
There are 3 1-drop Changelings.
This is broken.
Right? I hope.
So guarantee you, there will be a Dragon Giada. So what is Giada? Giada is like a 2 mana 2/2 angel that taps to add mana to cast angels. And the curve will be Dragon Giada, untap, Mox Jasper, drop a 5-drop dragon that like blows some stuff up, and then like you win the game. So if dragons are a focus of this set, they have to put like lower mana value dragons in. Otherwise, you can't, like the set is like 100% unplayable, right? So there's only 2 paths you can do that. Make smaller dragons or make like the dragon synergy cards. Like we had that the last time we came back, right? Like reveal a dragon from hand and then this monk gets like some random abilities. Since they already did that, I feel we're getting small dragons and I feel Dragon Giada is on its way and then Mox Jasper will be insanely broken. That is my guess.
So Dragon Giada, I think that could be a possibility. Although it is worth mentioning, they are actually bringing back that mechanic, is Behold a Dragon. So to Behold a Dragon, you choose a dragon in your hand or one that's on the battlefield, and then you do a thing. So they did keyword that reveal a dragon mechanic.
I mean...
So Mox, and then is this CDHable? Like, it could be the Rogac thing where you just toss in the command zone to get access to this, like, random Mox. So are we going to get, like, a 1 mana value dragon commander that's a partner that you never cast?
I'm just not going to underestimate a Mox. Like I said, Mox Amber looks pretty safe, and it ends up in the right shell being broken. So I feel like anytime you have a Mox, the potential there is there for it to be broken. I don't think it'll happen in Standard necessarily, although it might be played fairly in Standard. But I do think there's probably going to be like that Magda Changeling deck in Modern that's like not a tier 1 deck by any stretch, but it's 5-0'd some leagues. Like there's got to be some shell that someone figures out, oh my god, this is just like going to break Mox Jasper. So I wouldn't be surprised if sooner or later someone breaks it.
Mox Tantalite in shambles. I think that's like the first Mox we got, right? The suspend.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I forgot about
right?
that one.
One's bad.
I forgot about that one.
This one's for you, Seth. Skirmish Rhino.
Yes!
White, black, green. 3/4, trample. When this creature enters, each opponent loses 2 life. You gain 2 life. It's baby Siege Rhino.
It's baby Siege Rhino, except... Honestly, bear with me. Is this just better than actual Siege Rhino? Like,
I think it might be. I think it's kind of...
I actually think it might actually just be better. Like, you cut 1 off of everything, but I think 3 mana is just better than 4
That's
mana.
more efficient, yeah.
A 3 mana 3/4 Trampler that drains for 2 when it enters. I feel like this is actually like a reasonable card. Like, it is a worthy successor to the greatest creature of all time, for sure.
You can Coco into it. You can use a lot of the current Standard reanimation game plan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. Oh, I'm so excited for this card. And this card just everything about this makes me happy because I was really worried that this was going to be like another hat set, but at least from the early spoilers that we've seen, it feels like Tarkir to me. Like this actually feels like we're actually respecting the source material and we're going back and like it's not just like loot somersaulting through everything or like this has made me feel way better about like the direction they're going with this set.
They print you one siege Rhino and you're
That's it. That's what you got me. That's it.
You're
All is
Watsy
forgiven,
shield now.
Wizards. All is forgiven. Yes,
Just one
you're
siege
great,
Rhino
Wizards.
and
You're
that
great.
changes everything.
Loot's there.
Is this good though? Is this
Give it a
standard
second.
playable? Is this good?
It's a 3/4. It's got 4 toughness, so that means it doesn't die to nowhere to run.
The hard part of evaluating
down.
all these cards is we've seen a lot of 3-color cards, right? It's a wedge set. We don't really have a lot of 3-color wedge decks in standard currently. So I feel like right now, it's not like I'm like, oh, there's this Abzan deck that exists to put this in. But I think once we get the rest of the set, like it's built around 3 colors. So there probably will be an Abzan deck. And I think just in a vacuum, I think it's a playable card. Like I think the combination of stats and ability is enough to make it standard
what they need
playable.
is
At least.
I think
Restoration Angel at 3 mana. It's a 2/3 and it enters
yes.
blink. We just take all the old cards and take off 1 mana and like 1 power toughness and then add them back. Like that's what we're gonna do. We can Resto Angel and then Skirmish Rhino. Perfect. I saw it, guys.
I think this time around, unlike last cons, I'm not gonna do what I did, and it's gonna and in a vacuum, this creature looks great. One of those creatures that I thought was nuts was Savage Knuckleblade.
Oh, nuts. Yeah.
I mean, that card
Savage
was
Knuckleblade.
very good, right? It is a very good Magic card at the time. But
Teamer just didn't work, right?
yeah, Teamer just was not
Yeah.
good. So we're gonna see if Abzan is playable this time around.
I
if
gotta.
you go. I was gonna say if you go through the history of bad spoiler takes, I'm sure the majority of them are like random mid-range threats, right? Because like they're all interchangeable. Like remember, what was the Golgari one that when something dies, it scries or whatever? Like
Yeah.
it's a 4/5. Like mid-range threats are still interchangeable, and the color combinations around them like really matter. And then they're kind of like all interchangeable, so it doesn't even matter. But yeah, it'd be no surprise if this card was like stone unplayable or the greatest card in standard. It could be either one, and it's a coin flip depending on what Abzan actually has in the format, right?
I will say having Land of War Elves definitely helps. Like this could be a turn two play in standard, which is.
Oh, it doesn't help you though. You needed a green source on turn 1, so you need a dual land on turn 1.
You do need a duel, but
yeah.
All right,
which is where the Verge is coming.
I gotta ask you about this card, Krim, because you were the person I thought of when I first saw this card. And that card is Inevitable Defeat, it's called. It's a 4-mana Mardu instant that says this spell can't be countered. Exile target non-land permanent. Its controller loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So, Void Rend, except in Mardu, and a little bit more expensive. How good is this card, Krim? Like, is this a playable card?
No, this is so expensive.
What about the like Dream for 3? Like when I first read it, I was like, oh no, it's too expensive. But then I was like, wait, this is actually the Siege Rhino. It's just on a removal spell, but it's like a 4-drop that drains for 3. We got Lightning Helix. Maybe you just like burn them out. Could there be like some weird burn deck with it?
Okay, right now, right, obviously with the very limited knowledge we have, I say I think it's too overcosted, right? Like Void Rend was right there at 3 mana. Right, like, and this is 4 mana. I don't know, unless there's gonna be a lot of good stuff in Mardu. Let's see how Mardu plays out, because last time Mardu was not that great of a color pairing, except for aggro, which at this point I definitely do not want a 4 mana removal spell. Right, so I don't know. This looks nah. I'd rather have Lightning Helix, to be honest with you.
Both, just play both.
No,
not the colors. Like,
yeah,
I could see if it was Esper, I could see a world where you actually jam 4 in your deck, right? Where you're like, I don't know, you're playing like Esper Mirrors all day. You need to use this to remove your opponent, and they take 12 damage in the process. But it's Mardu, typically an aggressive color. It's a 4 mana thing. I don't know. I think the colors are going to hold it back, but who knows? Maybe the top deck in the format will be Mardu. So then this is actually like a legitimate either role player, sideboard card, or even main deck staple. But it seems very expensive. But it exiles, right?
It exiles.
That
and the flexibility
means something.
is nice.
Yeah.
Too expensive.
And we're in
though.
a standard where you got to deal with Simulacrum Synthesizer, you got to deal with Overlords, you got to deal with Caretaker's Talent. Like, there's a lot of diverse permanent types you need to deal with. So I like the flexibility, but yeah, it is maybe 1 mana away from really being pushed.
Who
They
needs
should
3
use
life
3.
when you can just zerr your whole board and like gain 50%?
Yeah, that's also true.
They really should have just made this 3 mana though. Inevitable defeat. Like it should just been hard. The Mardu cost, and that's it.
Wait, that'd be so good if it was 3 mana,
Yeah.
kill anything, and then you helix their face.
Yeah.
That would be very strong.
I mean, think about it. Crackling Doom was absurd for its time, right?
Yeah.
So, like, this is the main thing I'm wondering. The 3 color pairings are going to get pushed again. They had fetches before. That standard was $1 million.
Are we getting
That
fetches
was-
back?
I don't think they're bringing fetches back, and they said they would never. But how are you going to do 3 colors? Like, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, like 3 colors without fetches is rough. Do we have triomes? No.
No, we don't
No.
have triomes.
Tri-fetches?
Are they power creeping
Maybe they do
triomes?
tri-fetches. Maybe they power
Yeah.
creep fetches.
Maybe they just
You get-
reprint them. Well, not the fetches, the triomes or something like that. But I'm very curious to see how the mana plays out. This is something that I am most in. This is the most interesting part to going back to cons. It's a 3 color set, very heavy color pip cards with no fetches. So our mana
It's gonna
as
be
of right
like
now-
try land with behold or some garbage like that.
I wouldn't completely write off fetches. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's
Really?
impossible. I think the power level has gotten so much higher in standard, and we're getting this like such a huge standard with so many sets. I don't know if the old rules from like a decade ago when Wizards said, "Oh, we're not going to do that again." I don't know if they apply anymore. So I don't think the odds are like in favor of it, but I think there's like some % chance that they bring back fetches. But I mean, at least the only duels that you can fetch with them right now are tapped, like there's surveil lands and then commons, which might help a little bit. Last time tapping up on tapped dual lands was just, oh my god, that made for a horrible format. But they got to do something to fix the mana to make this work, and I'm sure they will. So I'll have to, if you got predictions, let us know in the comments. So I don't think we have time to go through any more cards. The good news is we're like 2 weeks away from full spoiler season, but you can check them all out over at mtgpreviews.com. But before we go today, I got one interesting fish mail question I wanted to ask you guys. And this one actually comes from Blue Sky. So we have a Goldfish Blue Sky account now. If you want to take it MTG Fishmail over there, you're welcome to, along with Twitter. So it comes from Lemon Font at Blue Sky Social. Says, MTG Fishmail, I've noticed lately a lot of LGSs have dining options at the table, but this does bring up the issue of cleanliness. What food do you ban at your table? What food would you ban at your LGS hybrid gaming / dinner table?
Wait, no one actually plays while eating, right?
Wait, do you not play what?
Oh no, people do.
That seems obscene. Normally,
It is obscene.
you eat between rounds or before or after or whatever, right? But you're eating like a burger in the middle of your game, like what?
Unless you're knife and forking that burger, anything that requires you to touch the food and you can't eat it with a knife and fork, I'm not touching that. And no open top drink.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
open
But
top
how do you
drink.
even have room to put food on the table? Like, there's
You-
no
you're
room.
putting it on your lap. You're putting it on your lap, dude.
I think we need to reevaluate life choices if this is how we're we're doing it, right? Like,
I mean,
just
how
show
is
up
it
an
any
hour
different?
early, eat your meal,
No,
or
no.
after you play your FNM, eat with your buddies, and tell your bad beat stories. But
How is that
simultaneously,
how's that any different than if we're playing video games, Richard, and you pull up your, I don't know, burrito bowl, right? While we're playing video games. It's the same thing. You're getting food around your keyboard and desk and all of that. It's all the same.
That's true.
I feel like the LGSs that are doing this, wouldn't they take into account like that some foods are kind of messy and greasy and just not sell those? Like, I feel like it would be on the LGS to make sure that their menu was safe for tables that are also gameplay.
They have to sell burger and fries and pizza and whatever, right? Like, that's the staple diet of pro gamers.
Yeah.
So, like,
But
you're not
that's like
gonna
the
sell
worst
it.
food. Like, if you got greasy pizza on your hands and you're playing Magic, oh my god, you're just gonna ruin everything, aren't you?
Or, I mean, you just have like a cup of water there, right? Like, you're like 1 second away from like all of your cars getting destroyed, right? That seems just bad.
Oh, open top drinks. That's
Even
all
if
I
it's
got.
closed top, it'll still leak out, right?
Maybe if you're irresponsible. What are you not putting the cap back on your drink?
I mean, if you have a straw in it or whatever, right, and it falls over, and it's gonna leak out, right?
You know what? It's fine. All of it's fine because I think at the end of the day, there's a mental agreement that you all make if you do this, right? Like it's like, yes, there's a chance.
But what are you gonna do? You're gonna be like, hey, buddy, you owe me $2,000 for ruining all my cards now. Like,
Yes.
like, are you really gonna pull that card? Like, I
Yes.
don't know, right? It just seems.
Would it work?
It seems bad. I've always thought about the situation. What if you like lend your deck to a friend or something, and they accidentally ruin your $500 card, right? And are you really gonna go ask them for $500, right? That would seem like the correct thing to do, or would you have to split season? Or I don't know what you would do in this case, right? And then it gets even more awkward between like strangers or whatever, right? But you can just avoid this by not having food at the table, right? Like, we
Yeah.
don't need to
Fair.
ruin all of our expensive cards. Even if your cards aren't ruined, your sleeves are all sticky. Who wants that, right? Especially if they want to read your card, you're like, could you just
Reaching across the table with the
could you
Dorito
just get some
hands.
Cheetos, sir? Like,
Their
Actually,
hand is just shining from all the grease off the pizza slice.
would you just scoop, Richard, if you saw like the Cheeto hand coming across to reach your card? Are you just scooping up your cards and like, I'm done real quick? You got this one?
like if that was a pod I would not sit down at that pod. If I was already down there, now I might be afraid to create a social situation. So I don't know what I would do at that point. But I'm like, I don't want to tell you how to eat your food, okay? Like, you eat your food however you want, right? But I care about my cards. What about my $100 Cecil the Dark Knight I just bought? Like I don't want it to be Cheetoed up. Right? I don't know what's going on.
Thick Yuffie, bro.
That's why Krim has invented Go-Gurt or whatever, the pouches that he drinks in the morning.
Yeah, his
he
little
just, like,
pouches
sucks
of
it.
applesauce. Yeah,
Applesauce,
just
dude.
sucks it
Oh, it's
down.
applesauce. Sorry, that's the pro gamer move right there. Just IV your food into you and play at the same time.
Anyway, on that note, I think that wraps up our podcast for today. Richard, how do people go about sending in a fish mail and also to the Blue Sky now too, apparently?
Yeah, hit us up with the hashtag MTGFishmail on Blue Sky or Twitter, and then we'll get your questions on air.
And that brings us to the end of episode 524 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Grimm, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a great week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.